My brother took the last money from my mother for the business, but it was a lie. He spent the money on himself. Because of this, my mother has financial problems and the bank wants to take the house, but my mother still loves him more than me and she turns a blind eye to everything, and it all went too far. Growing up, it was always obvious who the favorite was: my younger brother Alex. Mom doted on him like he was the second coming of Christ. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't abused or anything, but the difference was clear. If Alex got a new bike, I got his old one. If he wanted the latest video game, Mom would bust her back to get it, even if it meant telling me we couldn't afford the shoes I needed for school. But the thing about Alex was that he wasn't grateful. He had this air about him, like he deserved everything. And it wasn't just with Mom, it was with everyone. He'd smile in your face, say all the right things, but behind your back he didn't care. He'd take what he wanted and move on. I remember one time when we were teenagers. Dad had just fixed up this old car so Alex could use it to get to school and his part-time job. I was jealous, sure, but I thought, hey, maybe this will make him step up and be responsible. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Within a month, he'd crashed the car. When Dad asked him what happened, Alex lied and said another driver had hit him. Mom immediately believed him. Dad didn't. Why didn't you call the police if it wasn't your fault? Dad asked. Alex just shrugged and said, I didn't think of it. Of course, Mom defended him. He's just a kid, Jim. Don't be so hard on him. Meanwhile, I was sitting there thinking, if that was me, I'd be grounded until I was 30. That was the dynamic. Alex messed up and Mom cleaned it up. I was trying to do the right thing and it was barely noticed. Alex never changed. After the car incident, he became even more reckless. He quit his part-time job, saying it was too stressful. Mom defended him again, saying he needed to concentrate on school. The funny thing? He barely went to school. I'd see him hanging out with his friends, playing video games and occasionally making excuses for why he wasn't doing his homework. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass trying to help out around the house. I had my own part-time job, and I'd give half my wages to Mom to help with the bills. Did I get any thanks? Not really. Mom just assumed I was doing it because I was the responsible one. The worst thing was Alex's hypocrisy. He'd act like the perfect son when relatives came round, all smiles and charm. Oh, Mom, let me help you with that, he'd say, carrying a plate to the table. Everyone would swoon at how sweet he was. I wanted to scream. They didn't see how he treated Mom the rest of the time, as if her only job was to serve him. Once I overheard him telling one of his friends, my mom is so easy to manipulate. Just tell her what she wants to hear and she'll do what you want. I wanted to confront him immediately, but I knew it wouldn't do any good. Mom wouldn't believe me. Things got worse when Alex turned 18. He decided he didn't want to go to college. Instead, he persuaded Mom to give him money to start a business. He promised her he'd pay her back tenfold when he made it big. Spoiler alert, the business was a joke. He blew most of the money on gadgets, expensive trainers and who knows what else. By the time Mom realized what had happened, the money was gone. Of course, she didn't blame him. He's young, he made a mistake, she said, as if that excused everything. I couldn't believe it. If I'd done something like that, she'd never have let me hear the end of it. By the time Alex was in his early 20s, he perfected the art of getting what he wanted without having to work for it. Mom was still giving him money, still cleaning up his messes and still defending him to anyone who dared criticize him, including me. I tried to talk to her about it once. I said, Mom, don't you think it's time for Alex to stand on his own 2 feet? You can't keep bailing him out. She snapped at me and said, you don't understand. He's just struggling at the moment. He'll pull himself together eventually. It was always the same excuse. He's struggling. He's young. He just needs a little help. But how much help can a person need before they start helping themselves? One day things finally came to a head. Mom's financial situation was getting worse. She'd been dipping into her savings for years to support Alex, and now she was struggling to pay her bills. I helped as much as I could, but it wasn't enough. Meanwhile, Alex was still living his life as if nothing had happened. He moved out by then, but he kept calling Mom for money. He needed help with his rent, his car payment, his food, you name it. And she would always give it to him, even if it meant going without herself. I told her, "Mom, you can't go on like this. You're digging yourself into a hole and Alex doesn't even appreciate it." She got defensive, of course. "He's my son. What do you want me to do? Let him starve?" "No, but you're not helping him by enabling him," I said. "He'll never grow up if you keep saving him." She wouldn't hear it. She told me I didn't understand because I wasn't a parent. It wasn't long after that things really fell apart. It all started to unravel when Mom got a notice in the post. She was behind on her mortgage payments, way behind. I didn't even know how bad it was until she called me one night crying. She said, "I don't know what to do. The bank is threatening to take the house." I asked her how it had happened. She tried to blame rising costs, unexpected expenses, anything but the real problem. I pressed her until she finally admitted the truth. She'd given most of her money to Alex. He said he needed it. She whispered. I could barely contain my frustration. "Mom, he's an adult. You've given him enough. Now you're going to lose your house because of him." She tried to defend him. "It's not his fault. He's just going through a rough patch." "A rough patch?" I snapped. "He's been going through a rough patch all his life. When is it going to stop?" I told her I'd do what I could to help, but I wasn't rich. I could barely make ends meet myself. I asked her if she'd rung Alex to ask for help. She said she had, but he told her there was nothing he could do. He said it's my responsibility to find out. She said, her voice shaking. That was the last straw for me. Alex had bled her dry, and now that she was in real trouble, he was nowhere to be found. When I heard that Alex had refused to help, I couldn't hold back any longer. I called him. I didn't care if it turned into an argument. I needed to know how he could do this to our mother. When he picked up, he sounded annoyed, like I was bothering him. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" I said, barely keeping my cool. "I want to know how you can let Mom down like this. She's about to lose her house because of you." He sighed dramatically. "I don't know why that's suddenly my problem. She's the one who gave me the money. I didn't force her." "You didn't force her?" I snapped. "You manipulated her for years. You've taken everything from her, and now when she needs you, you just walk away?" Alex didn't even try to argue. "Look, I've got my own stuff to deal with. I can't save everyone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Save everyone? She's the reason you got this far. You'd have nothing without her. And this is how you repay her? He laughed bitterly. "You're such a saint, aren't you? Always doing the right thing. Well, if it means so much to you, why don't you help her? You're better at playing the hero anyway." That was it. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. When I told Mom what Alex had said, she defended him again. "He's just scared. He doesn't know how to deal with these things." I stared at her, speechless. How could she still apologize for him? But it didn't matter anymore. I knew Alex wasn't coming back, and it was up to me to figure out how to help her. After talking to Alex, I decided there was no point in wasting any more energy on him. It was clear he wasn't going to help. Mom, on the other hand, was in denial about how bad things had got. I sat her down and said, "Mom, you have to face this. The bank won't wait. We need a plan, and we need it now." She nodded, looking defeated. "I don't even know where to start," she said quietly. So I started for her. I went through her bills, her expenses, everything. It was worse than I thought. Her savings account was empty, and she was months behind on her mortgage. Her credit cards were maxed out, some of them, I later realized, with charges for things Alex had persuaded her to buy. The only option was to try and negotiate with the bank. I offered to go to the meeting with her, but she insisted on doing it herself. I think part of her was too embarrassed to let me see how far things had gone. While she was at the meeting, I got a text from Alex. At first I thought maybe he'd had a change of heart, but when I opened it, it just said, "Don't drag me into this mess. I've got my own problems." It felt like a slap in the face. I didn't even bother to reply. When Mom came back from the bank, she looked exhausted. They'd given her a temporary extension, but she had to make a substantial payment within the next month to avoid foreclosure. She didn't have the money, and neither did I. But I told her I'd help her get through it. "We'll get through this, Mom," I said. "But you have to promise me that you won't give Alex another cent." She hesitated. "He's still my son." "Yes, and I'm still your daughter," I shot back. "When are you going to start looking out for the people who actually care about you?" She didn't answer. It was as if everything happened at once. A week after the meeting with the bank, the phone calls became more frequent. At first, they were polite reminders about the payment deadline. But then the tone changed. They began to warn Mom of further legal action. One evening there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, there was a man in a suit holding a clipboard. He introduced himself as a representative of the bank. He didn't mince his words. "We've tried to resolve this matter amicably, but we're running out of time," he said. "If payment is not made in full by the end of the month, we'll have no choice but to proceed with foreclosure." I could feel Mum shrinking behind me as she listened. I tried to reason with the man, asking if there was any flexibility, but he just shook his head. "We've already extended the deadline once. There's nothing more we can do." After he left, Mum sat at the kitchen table, her hands shaking. "I don't know how I let it get so bad," she whispered. Before I could answer, there was another knock at the door. This time it wasn't someone from the bank, but a stranger I'd never seen before. He asked for Alex. "Sorry, he doesn't live here," I said. The guy frowned. "He owes me money. A lot of it. He said he'd meet me here." I shut the door quickly, not wanting Mum to hear. But the guy came back a few days later, and this time he wasn't alone. It was clear that Alex had borrowed from everyone under the sun, and now they were turning up at Mum's house looking for him. When I confronted Alex, he brushed it off like it was no big deal. "Don't let these guys scare you," he said. "They're all talk. They're coming to Mum's house." I snapped. "Do you even care what it does to her?" He didn't care. "Look, I'm not the one losing a house. That's on her." I couldn't believe his audacity. "She's in this mess because of you." He just laughed. "If she can't handle it, maybe she shouldn't have made all those bad decisions. Not my problem." I hung up, furious. Mum didn't know about the strangers coming over, and I wasn't sure how much more she could take. The pressure was becoming unbearable. The bank kept calling, their tone getting sharper with each conversation. Strangers kept turning up at the house, asking for Alex, sometimes banging on the door when I didn't answer. It was as if a dark cloud had settled over everything. One evening I found Mum sitting in the dark kitchen, her head in her hands. She barely looked up as I walked in. "I don't know what to do anymore," she whispered. I sat down beside her and said, "Mom, we can't go on like this. You have to tell the bank everything about Alex, the money, everything. Maybe they'll work with you." She shook her head. "They won't care. They'll just see it as an excuse. It's my fault for trusting him." Before I could answer, there was another knock at the door. I froze. Mum looked terrified. "Please don't let it be one of those people again," she said. I opened the door just enough to see who it was. It was the same man as before, the one who said Alex owed him money. But this time he wasn't alone. There were 2 other guys with him, and they didn't look friendly. "Look," I said, trying to keep calm. "Alex doesn't live here. I don't know where he is." "You're wasting your time." The man grinned. "Well, he said I'd find him here. So until he pays up, we'll keep coming back." I slammed the door and locked it. My hands were shaking as I turned back to Mum. She looked like she was going to cry. "What did they want?" "Nothing," I lied. "They're just looking for Alex." She nodded, but didn't say anything. I could see the guilt and fear on her face. I called Alex again that night. "You have to sort this out," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "They're coming to the house now, scaring Mom. She can't take it." His reply? "Not my problem. She's the one who tried to help me, remember? Maybe you should step up instead of blaming me for everything." I hung up without another word. Mom didn't need to hear what he'd said. After that last call with Alex, I realized he wasn't going to help. If anything, he seemed to be enjoying watching us drown in the mess he had created. Mom was falling apart. She was barely eating, barely sleeping, and every time the phone rang or someone knocked, she flinched. I knew I had to do something, even if it wasn't fair. I didn't have the money to fix everything, but I had to try. The next morning I went to the bank myself. I sat down with one of the managers and explained the situation, how my mother had given money to my brother, how she'd been cheated by her own son, and how desperate we were to keep the house. The manager looked at me, clearly unimpressed. "I'm sorry, but the bank can't make decisions based on family matters. If the payment isn't made in full by the due date, foreclosure proceedings will commence," I begged. I told him I'd take out a loan, anything to buy us more time. After what seemed like an eternity, he agreed to give us a 2-week extension if I could prove we were working on a solution. I left the meeting feeling like I'd barely moved the needle, but at least it was something. When I got home, I told Mom what had happened. She tried to thank me, but I could tell she was too overwhelmed to feel any relief. That night I heard her on the phone. At first I thought she was calling a friend or maybe even a relative to ask for help. But then I heard his voice. "Alex. Alex," she said quietly. "Please, I need you. I'm going to lose everything." I stood outside the door and listened as he made excuse after excuse. "Mom might help if I could, but things are tight for me right now." "Tight?" she said, her voice shaking. "You've been driving around in that new car. You've been going on trips. You could help if you wanted to." He sighed as if bored. "Mom, it's not my job to solve your problems. I didn't ask you to give me this money." I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed the door open and grabbed the phone. "You selfish piece of..." I started, but he hung up before I could finish. Mom just sat there, tears streaming down her face. After that phone call with Alex, something inside me broke. I couldn't understand how anyone could be so heartless, especially to their own mother. She gave him everything and he couldn't even have the decency to try and help her. Mom didn't say much after I picked up the phone. She just sat there staring at her hands, looking so small and defeated. I wanted to shout at her, to ask her why she was always defending him, but I knew it wouldn't help. She'd always see Alex as her baby, no matter what he did. The next day things got worse. The bank sent another letter, this time with an official notice of repossession. They were done waiting. Mom had 2 weeks to come up with the money, or they'd start the process of taking the house. I scrambled to figure out what to do. I started looking at second jobs, loans, anything that would buy us time. Mom, meanwhile, was barely out of her room. Then, out of nowhere, Alex appeared. He walked into the house as if he hadn't left her just days before, wearing designer trainers and carrying an expensive-looking bag. He acted as if everything was fine, as if we weren't drowning in the mess he made. "Hey, Mom," he said, flashing her his trademark grin. "I thought about what you said and I'm here to help." I couldn't believe my ears. "You're here to help?" I said, standing in the doorway. "Now you care?" He shot me a look. "Not everything is about you, you know." Mom, of course, lit up like a Christmas tree. She hugged him, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Alex, I knew you'd come." I stood there watching the scene, my stomach churning. Something didn't feel right. So Alex shows up and acts like the big hero. He's all smiles and tells Mom he's here to help. I couldn't believe it. "How exactly are you going to help?" I asked him. He just shrugged and said something about pulling strings and talking to people. Typical Alex, vague and full of nonsense. Mom, of course, ate it up. She hugged him and said, "I knew you'd come through, Alex." I couldn't hold it in any longer. Come through? Are you kidding me? He's the reason we're in this mess. Mom gave me her usual "don't be so hard on him" speech, so I let it go. For her sake. But later that night, Alex cornered me in the hall. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice. "I'm going to help Mom, but I need something from you first." I stared at him. "What do you mean something? What now?" He hesitated for a second before saying, "I need some money. Just a loan to get things started." I couldn't help laughing. "Are you serious? You've already bled Mum dry and now you're coming after me?" "It's not like that," he said, trying to look sincere. "I'll pay you back. This is for Mum, not me." I just shook my head. "Unbelievable. No, Alex. You won't get a cent from me." He mumbled something under his breath and walked away, obviously pissed. When I told Mum about it, she just shrugged it off. "He's trying," she said. "At least he's here." I was furious. "He's not trying, Mum. He's using you. He's always used you." She wouldn't hear it. "He's my son," she said, as if that was the end of the conversation. A few days later, Alex was gone. Just like that. No explanation, no follow-up on his so-called plan to help Mum, nothing. She tried to call him a few times, but he didn't answer. I wasn't surprised, it was typical Alex behavior. Meanwhile, the bank wasn't backing down. Mum got more letters, more phone calls. The stress was eating away at her every day. I was doing everything I could, taking on extra shifts, selling some of my own stuff, but it still wasn't enough. One evening, after a particularly hard day at work, I came home to find Mum sitting in the kitchen, staring at yet another letter from the bank. She looked up at me, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't trying to defend Alex. "I don't know how I let it get so bad," she said quietly. "I thought he'd come back and fix it." "He's not coming back, Mum," I said. "Not to help, anyway. You have to stop waiting for him." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't really believe it. A week later, the repossession notice came. There was no more time. The house was gone. Mum had to pack up and move into a tiny flat, and I was the one who helped her every step of the way. And Alex? Nowhere to be found. Months went by. Mum was adjusting to her new reality, though it was hard for her. I was still there, helping out whenever I could, even though I was struggling myself. And then, out of nowhere, Alex turned up again. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him, disheveled, tired, clearly not well. "I need help," he said as soon as Mum opened the door. I stood there, stunned. After all he'd done, after all the pain he'd caused, he had the nerve to come back and ask for more. I was ready to throw him out, but Mum, she let him in. She hugged him, told him everything was going to be fine, and started making him food as if nothing had happened. I couldn't believe it. "Mum," I said, pulling her aside, "you can't go on like this. He'll never change. He's my son," she said, her voice shaking. "What am I supposed to do? Just leave him out there?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that I was her child too, that I'd been there for her through everything while Alex was out ruining her life. But I didn't. I just shook my head and walked out. That was the last straw for me. I still help Mum when I can, but I've stopped trying to save her from herself. If she wants to keep putting Alex first, that's her choice. But I know better now. I know who really cares and who doesn't. And Alex? He's still the same. He takes and takes, and Mum keeps on giving. I don't know why she doesn't see it. Maybe she never will. Let me know if this works for the ending.